forward to this session. Dr. Mae has some really cool things to share, specifically on business lessons from space. Now, that might seem out of this world, literally, but for me, when I was speaking with her, what I most learned was that actually some of the ways that we can push our organizations forward is no longer to do with being incremental. I think this era of being able to improve things 1%, change a process by 1% is kind of over, and in order to exceed the pace of change, we need to have new, innovative, bold thinking. So for this session on lessons on pursuing the extraordinary, I would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Mae Jemison. What would you prefer? Okay. Thank you. So I gave a little bit of background information to our audience, but I really want to hear from you, and let's set the scene. Your career has been, let's say, unconventional. You've not taken the conventional path. You've done things that are unusual, bold, and I want to understand from you, what were the defining decisions that set you on the trajectory to space and beyond?
Okay, so I don't know if we're now trying to go over how many years of my life, but here's what I say, is that, you know, there's usually not one single decision that sets you on a path, and I think you asked, to space. Mm-hmm. I mean, if there was one single decision, it was having the nerve to go ahead and apply to NASA, right? Sort of calling down to Johnson Space Center and saying, hello, I'd like to be an astronaut. And I said, okay, let's connect you to the astronaut selection office. That in itself was a big step because it just sort of seems like it's a ridiculous thing to do, especially back then. Nowadays, maybe not so much. But I think that those steps that you take happen all along. Mm-hmm. It just so happened that I had the right requirements for being an astronaut, right, in terms of the science background. And then there was one thing, a decision that I made early on when I was graduating from medical school and also finishing up my internship, that I thought might have a negative impact on my career. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to do biomedical engineering, I wanted to do research and design. But while I was in medical school, I'd had the good fortune of going overseas and working in developing countries. Mm-hmm. a number of times. So I decided to apply to be the Area Peace Corps medical officer. And that meant that for 2.5 years, I was working in West Africa in a very low-resourced environment in Sierra Leone and Liberia. I was responsible at 26 for the health of all the volunteers in the two countries, the health of the State Department personnel. I just wanted to do it because I thought the medicine would be very interesting, right? And I enjoyed being in other countries. I enjoyed that challenge. But I didn't think it would count for anything. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, it counted a lot for the astronaut corps. Why? Because it was operational medicine. It meant that I was in an environment that was difficult. I had to make decisions real time that had life and death decisions. And so something that I thought was a throwaway, in some ways, became much bigger. So I say the decisions happen all the time. Mm-hmm. It's whether or not you take the risk to try them. And that going to Sierra Leone instead of just continuing on with my medical career as you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, yeah. So lots of little, I guess, little points on that journey that build towards the main thing. Right. And so this session is about lessons on pursuing the extraordinary. I want to understand from you, what does that mean to you? And is it possible to pursue the extraordinary in your everyday life?
So I have notes here because there's so many things that I want to talk about, but I want to stay on point, right? So extraordinary means something that's not commonplace, that's remarkable, that's unusual, that's exceptional. Now remember, that doesn't imbue it with it's necessarily good. Like sometimes people do extraordinary things or pursue extraordinary things. It's not necessarily good. And I always have to put those ideas in. But for me, what it means is that you see something that is out of the everyday, and then you look and try to understand what it means to accomplish it. What will be its impact? And that's how you do it. And it's not that it's like, boy, I'm gonna do this in one fell swoop. Sometimes it's actually building up to it, mm-hmm. right? You have to get the little pieces right. It's not all, and every day, like, you know, you don't want people to be extra, right? And that's what happens if every day you're trying to do the extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
You really have to understand how to work it in and what you're doing it for. What is the purpose? What is the reason?
Yeah. Now, I want to understand, so I'm really obsessed with this idea of like, what business lessons can we apply from space? And so we've got big, massive challenges in the workplace at the moment. We've got things like AI transformation, climate challenges, new expectations from the workforce. And I want to understand, how do you help teams reframe these big, overwhelming challenges into achievable missions?
Well, again, I say that what you always have to do is understand the purpose. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, then it's really easy to get scattered or, you know, like be attracted to the next new shiny thing just because it's there. So you have to have the purpose, why you're doing it. And I think if we go back to things like climate change, AI, all of those, we have to understand that they didn't just show up. They've been around for a long time, the thoughts, the ideas about the impact that we have on this world. People have been, the only way we can really record climate change, you know, is because we were taking data for years. So understanding that it really is built up by pieces. AI is a tool, right? You can say that, I remember going back to Sierra Leone, I remember getting this book on AI way back then about how they were starting to do it and taking a class at UCLA on AI, just because now it's gotten to the point that more people see its usefulness, it doesn't mean that it's just there. And I think if we understand the background of things, the continuity makes it easier to understand what you're working with. Also understanding that many technologies are just tools, right? We imbue them with these magical, mystical powers, and they're just tools. And they were tools that were designed by people to accomplish something. What's designed into that tool depends on the people who are doing the design, right? Their hopes, dreams, fears, ambitions, their knowledge base, their perspectives. And so, you know, when we're starting to talk about leaders or people incorporating things in, I think there are a couple things leaders have to understand. They may not have all the information or the best or the newest or the brightest information, and that you must be willing to follow sometimes too. And so finding those people, those individuals within your team and actually making sure the team is part of that process of leading forward.
You raised a good point, and actually this came up in the session before, that humans are the key, and so we need to kind of view the technology alongside the people and how it supports that and where humans fit into that equation.
Where the technology fits into the human equation. I think
Correct.
how you say it makes a really big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the person is the key, right? And one of the things we were talking about before actually was communication. We had a lot of people in the room that come from communication backgrounds, and being in space, I know every communication is critical, there's limited bandwidth. So I want to understand, how does that sort of discipline translate to how leaders should communicate their vision and strategy to their teams?
Okay, there was a lot in that question, so I'm going to unpack it the way I have to. And I'm going to put some stuff aside and come back to it. So it depends on what you're trying to communicate and what it is you're trying to get across. So when you're in space, or when you're on, even like you're in the OR, right, in a surgical room, you have a shorthand that most of the people, everyone in that room understands. So you can use that shorthand. You also probably have practiced this before, so you actually know what the steps are and what's going to happen. So when you're in space, so for example, we had tried experiments and worked through things multiple times. So when I'm communicating to the ground, and the bandwidth was really limited back then, it's just I say I'm step 22, I did so and so with the frog eggs transfer, they're in the centrifuge, you know, moving on. What does that mean to you right now? Not anything, right? But it is that short, succinct communication. But if I said, wow, I'm working on the frog embryology experiment now, and I've taken the eggs from the adult female frogs, I've fertilized them, and I've put them in the 1G centrifuge, and they'll be there for 45 minutes as per step one. That's a whole different thing, right? And I think that sometimes we forget and we get into this jargon of communication.
Yeah.
How many times do you have these teams that get together and they're from different places and everybody's using jargon? And sometimes you can be in the same field, but you're in different companies or different organizations, and people are using jargon. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that clear communications, it really comes from knowing what it is you want to communicate, who you're talking to, who the audience is. Have they been there with you before? Have you practiced this?
Yeah.
If not, then you need to actually say in plain words what you mean. And that's the only way to communicate. You can keep it short. You can decide if you want to tell a story. And I love storytelling. It's getting a little bit overboard right now. No, I'm sorry. And the reason why I say that is because I used to always talk about we have to tell a better story for space, and we do still need to tell a better story. But that doesn't mean giving all your every thought, every concept, every feeling you've ever had for something.
Yeah.
Is that too?
That
too
totally
harsh?
resonates, because I think there's kind of like an emphasis on, is it adding value and quality, and does it actually link back to the action or the outcome, right? And so understanding like how the whole thing pieces together, is it a relevant detail? So I totally agree.
Right, and that's a self thing, right? Some of that is a self thing. Here's the catch. You also have to give people room to tell their story or tell what they say, because I found that people cannot hear you until they've talked sufficiently. Ever notice that? It just, there's like, what is the opposite of talking? Isn't listening, it's waiting. No, but you need, so all of this is about balance. I think sometimes we want single step answers. But this is where the wisdom, this is where the experience base comes in, because we need to balance it. And sometimes people haven't learned how to communicate succinctly yet.
Yeah. And as I wait or listen to ask the next question, so
Didn't mean it's
we're ready for that. So there's something. So you've spoken, actually threaded throughout your answers. You've spoken a little bit about teams coming together and working together. And this is something that, in order for space exploration to work really well, you need people in synchronization. Specifically, there are diverse skill sets, diverse teams, and different locations coming together to achieve that end outcome. What lessons from your NASA experience should leaders apply to create cultures where extraordinary outcomes are possible?
So I'm going to switch on you for a second,
Yeah,
because I have this slide up, and it's kind of cute.
Go for it.
But I want to tell you about the work that I do and what so much of where I am now came together from all my experiences, from having grown up on the south side of Chicago during the 1960s, wanting to be a hippie but not quite old enough to be, dance, being an engineer, being majoring in African and African American studies, environmental studies professor, being an astronaut, working overseas, all of that has come together to bring me where I am now. And what I do, some of the work that I do now is called 100 Year Starship.
Yeah.
And 100 Year Starship, the title that won this DARPA proposal, which was a Geek Prize of the Year at the time it was done, was called An Inclusive, Audacious Journey Transforms Life Here on Earth and Beyond. And the word inclusive, I can guarantee you, if I had not been leading the group that was writing this proposal, inclusive would not have been the first word, but that's because of my background. But it was inclusive across ethnicity, gender, and geography, but also very much inclusive across disciplines, because you can't do something like this with one discipline. So 100 Year Starship, that's where the extraordinary came from. When we started to look at it, we know that interstellar if you talk to real space people, and you start talking about humans going to another star back then, they would like, what's wrong with her? But so this time we had to tell a story to make it work. So we said, we pursue an extraordinary tomorrow to build a better world today. This is 100 Year Starship's mission statement in 2010. But I'm gonna go to one piece that said, what we will do is unreservedly dedicate ourselves to identifying and pushing these radical leaps in knowledge and technology needed to achieve interstellar while pioneering and transforming applications to everyday life. Because you can't do these things that are just way beyond the pale without people understanding how it impacts their lives. And also it makes you better as you connect to things. So I gotta do space a little bit, right? That's what space exploration looks like today. Right? In fact, that's my mission. That's Endeavour taking off. I know we're not flying the shuttle, but if you look at any of these launches, right, there's a whole bunch of smoke and flame and all that kind of stuff. So if you start to look further, when you do interstellar, it's not gonna look like that. It's gonna be completely different. It might be something that the Empire State Building could fit in. It's gonna be a completely different vehicle. That was what space exploration looks like today. If you didn't know that I wasn't on space station, this looks like space station, right? It just looks like any other thing. It also looks like the Apollo-Soyuz missions, right, in Skylab. But that's okay. But the transformation to low Earth orbit, from low Earth orbit to interstellar, will be as different from that as that is from the bridge of the Enterprise. Y'all know if you have a picture with Worf and you're in a Star Trek, if anybody who watches Star, you're gonna show it. Anyway. So here's why it's important. It's important because the really extreme hurdles of interstellar require that we rethink what we think we know. We have to reevaluate it because it demands these radical leaps in knowledge. Here's the deal. What we think we know about space is based on going to the moon, going to Mars. We could be on Mars if we wanted to. Right? It's just a commitment. We know where it lives, right? Yeah. We got the address, we've been there a bunch of times, right? We've taken samples and all kinds of things. So interstellar is completely different. And let me tell you why interstellar is different. This is where you get into the radical leaps of purpose. One person said, if you put 3 grains of sand into a vast cathedral, that cathedral is more filled with sand than space is with stars. Let me just put it another way. It's not like anything that we know. Voyager, which I think is the coolest thing we've done, was launched in 1977, and it's been traveling at over 37,000 miles per hour, 37,000 miles per hour since 1977, and it just reached the edge of our solar, just went out of our solar system. And if it were on its way to Alpha Centauri, our closest neighboring star, which is 25 trillion miles away, 4.2 light years, it would take it over 50,000 years to get there. Interstellar is different from here. And that's the reason why it's interesting, because it pushes you to do more. What are the things you have to do with interstellar journey? The distances are like nothing that we're used to. And then the time that it would take, even if you're able to go like 0.10, 10% the speed of light, 20% the speed of light, it still would take you, 50 years, 100 years to get there. We don't do things, spacecraft that last 100 years that carry people inside, right? So there's something different. And even if you were able to do all that, once you're going fast enough, we don't know how to go that fast. Once you're going fast enough, you're not going to slow down to get groceries, so you got to take everything with you, right? You do. You have to take everything with you. And then there's another part of it, that autonomy, right? You're by yourself. That implies different things to the vessels and stuff. And 90% of what you're encountering is dark. So I got dark physicist people here, dark matter, dark energy, right? What is it, a fudge factor to make our equations work well? We think we know what it is. We like, how many times we said, well, we were just on the verge of finding it. But the basic is that 90% of what holds the universe together in the way that we have described it, we don't know what it is, and we haven't identified it. But isn't that like the future, right? we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So what 100-Year Starship is really about is how do you start working with the future and requirements for going into the dark, right? Their flexibility, their self-reflection, robustness. You have to have deep knowledge. You have to be open to things. You have to have new systems design. You have to recognize new environments. You have to do some reality testing, right? You have to check reality every now and then. You have to have a compass. You need to take along some people who know some stuff you don't know, right? So it means that you have to have a whole group of people there. So if we just look at some of the areas for radical leaps and capabilities, medical diagnostics, health optimization, manufacturing in space, you have to understand civilizations. How do people invest in something for a long period of time? Logistics and systems, error detection. Think about it. If you're going 10% the speed of light, you have a little bitty navigation error. You're not going to get where you're going, right? Because you'll be off. Education, people here on Earth going further. All of those things are there. Energy, closed loop systems, materials, microbiome, because you have to grow your own food, right? All of those things are part of it. That's where the inclusiveness comes. That's where all of those pieces come. And why is it relevant? It's relevant because the challenges of interstellar mirror the challenges we face in the world today. If we can just get a little bit of the energy that we might be able to generate safely through fusion or antimatter, it completely changes energy here on Earth, right? If you're able to understand the microbiome, which is dying out in the soil now, it changes things. And there's where the pieces lie. And so what we do with 100-Year Starship is try to figure out, not create a technology map, because technology maps mean that you know what the technology is, right? Or you can describe it. What you need to do is to create capability maps. Here's what I need to be able to do. I need to go much, much faster. I need to be able to build a ship that regenerates itself. I need to be able to get funding that allows it to be invested and then it comes out on the other side and helps people every day. So all of those pieces are in it. All parts of human skills and society are there and are challenged.
That's cool. So I'm really inspired by 100-Year Starship. I think you've obviously set a really audacious goal, but what's crucial is you've kind of connected it back to the everyday challenges or the overwhelming challenges that we spoke about. Just to finish on that, if the audience were to take one principle away from 100-Year Starship vision and apply it into their work, what should it be?
From 100-Year Starship vision, I think it really is about the capabilities mapping versus, because you know how people tell you, okay, we're gonna write all this out and we got it all written down. And on such and such a day, 5 years from now, we're gonna have this. And they assume, presume that we already know all the technology, all the pieces that are necessary. But if you don't have some flexibility and openness, we never will see things, right? So even now with AI, people assume, hey, here's what AI is gonna do. I would say that the issue is not with AI, it's with people. And again, that goes into what we talked about. I think the big piece is people, that we need to understand that we are probably now really starting to underdevelop people by not allowing them to do, we used to have this term called scut work, which is where you had to calculate stuff by hand. When you calculate it by hand, you really understand, right? I'm trying to look out and find out, anybody ever had to calculate stuff by hand and you didn't have the graph and stuff, but they made you calculate it by hand and create the graph? You understand what you did much better than if the other thing did the work, because you didn't want to rewrite those numbers again. So you wanted to try to get it right. That develops capacity. And so frequently now I see us underdeveloping, undervaluing the capacity. People assume that the creativity is going to be there because computer programs that, yes, integrate information that's already out there will necessarily come up with that spark of new thing, right? They may be able to, programs in medicine they may be able to go through and look at a patient's charts and look at the final diagnosis and sort of say, go back and in regression, say, if you had looked at this patient's chart this way and integrated their x-rays and stuff, then you would have come out with the answer. I would suggest that good doctors should be able to do that. Yes, the computers can go through subject matter and things too, but you also need to have a person go through it and verify it. But we won't have that ability if we don't let people encourage people to do the scut work and develop their capacities.
Nice. There's a term you mentioned, which was radical leap. And I think I understand what this means as a concept, but how do you actually know when it's time to make a radical leap rather than just like an incremental improvement?
So that's what I think. I'm going to forward this. I've thought about it. I'm going to forward this to this slide. So this is some of the initiatives with 100 Year Starship. We know we don't have good enough energy, right? So some of the things would be trying to understand what kind of energy pieces. We need new disciplines, right? Because if you took all the chemical energy in the solar system, it would not be enough to get you to Alpha Centauri.
Yep.
Okay, so what that means is that we have to find new energy systems. One of the other things, for example, is health. Right now, if you look at space station, all the medicine goes up and comes down. You talk to the doctors on the ground. Even when they're thinking about going to Mars, they're thinking about how you still are going to be able to compare. But you know what? All the bacteria on your skin starts to change. All of those things happen. So we created something we call crucibles, right? Where you forge new ideas into concepts. And the crucibles are those new disciplines because relativistic space travel is not a thing, but we need to know that is going close to the speed, some percentage of the speed of light. How do you navigate? What do you do with that? That's a new discipline. And to be able to evaluate people's imagination when they come up with things, right? And so I think it's really that radical leaps is when you really don't know where to go. And how do you figure out something you need to do, you don't know where to go, and so you open up your imagination and say, what are some of the possibilities? But the best way to do that, bring other people in the room. Bring folks who don't know they're not to say certain things. So that means, like with us, we bring an artist in the room, we bring theologians, we bring people who are very skilled in what they do, but they've never been involved in space exploration, to get in the room and talk about things because it helps us define it more. And we've done programs like that over and over again, and it is those radical leaps that make a difference.
Excellent. I've got one final question for you before I come to some of the audience questions. So if you haven't asked a question yet, now is your time to start getting into the app and asking those questions. So my final question for you is, looking out onto the room and also online, if everyone watching this were to go back to their organizations tomorrow, determined to pursue something extraordinary, what's the first thing they should do?
Well, you talked about learning how to communicate, right? I'm going to do two things.
Yeah.
Okay? One is to understand that everybody does not use the same language and the same words. And don't assume because they don't speak in your jargon, in your field, that they cannot understand your field or that they don't already have some understanding and something to offer. I think that is one of the really critical things I've found, that people assume folks just don't know because they're not speaking the language the same way. I found the more that I talk about space exploration to different audiences, I don't necessarily use jargon even when talking with people in space. And they're like, how come they not using our words, right? But I can read the papers, I can write the papers and things like that. But I find sometimes it's just easier because I might switch from talking about engines to talking about life sciences, and they're not the same thing. But here's the one I want to do. I want to show you an image. And the thing that we have to do in the world today, we have to see ourselves as #Team Earthlings, right? We have to see ourselves as connected to this planet and connected to one another. That image that you're seeing is Messenger, which was a craft that was going out to the far side of the solar system as it came by the Earth. And it actually, and I really love this picture. Let me see. No, it's not going back. Okay, but anyway, I just love the fact that it was literally our Earth spinning in space, seen by another craft, something that we sent out. If we don't see ourselves as connected, not just with people, but the soil, the plants, and the animals, we're in trouble. No matter how much we talk about space, we're going to be on this planet for generations to come. How we use it, how we interact, makes a difference. And we can't photosynthesize. We can go, and I know that somebody's going to raise a hand and say, what about if we put the genetics into our DNA, so we're going to stand in one place and photosynthesize? But anyway, but we need to understand that we're connected to this whole planet, and we cannot live, even if we go into space, unless we take some of this planet with us. And so for me, the most radical thing we can do is understand how we're impacting this hashtag Team Earthlings.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much. Now, please give a round of applause for that. So, can I please get a roaming mic from my trusty tech team? Whilst we get the iPad set up so we can go through the questions, let's go back to in-person questions. So we have a roaming mic. Does anyone have a question in the audience? I know some of you have put them in the app. We are getting that sorted. But whilst we do that, who would like to be bold and put themselves forward, inspired by Dr. Jemison, to ask a question? Who would like to go first? Someone's going to have to help me out here. Thank you. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks for joining us. My question is, does space really smell like steak? I've heard that it smells like steak. I think I heard that. I'm afraid who I heard that from, but another astronaut. And what was your favorite and least favorite part about being up in orbit, up in space?
So my mission did not smell like steak. I hadn't heard the steak stuff, but sometimes, depending on where you are in station, because it's been up so long, remember I told you those things with Earth come up with you? Things like mold and stuff like that, and they say, hey, we can grow here. So maybe that's the musty scent that somebody may have mistaken for steak. What would you say? What was my...
What are your favorite and least favorite parts about going into space?
Probably the... It's difficult because it's come up with one, people ask for the most. It's like, depending on what day it was different. But what was incredible, of course, is the views, but also was incredible the work that we're doing, because we actually did a frog embryology experiment where we wanted to see whether or not frog eggs could organize themselves once fertilized correctly into tadpoles. Here on the ground, if you change their orientation up and down, you always got malformations. In space, there is no up and down, so you assume you're going to get malformations. It was a great experiment because you had to do a lot of stuff with your hands. It wasn't just something you watch. And the outcome of it is the embryos knew how to organize themselves as tadpoles. So now you have to go back and rethink some of the ideas we had. The least favorite part was, of course, it ending, but then there was, sometimes I wished I was up there by myself. And the reason why is because, you want to sit there and you want to zen out, like I'm trying to zen here. And people doing stuff all around you and everything. And I thought, it would be great if I were just here with my cat. This would be the best. Who is that has a space cat? One of those sci-fi movies that I missed. Yeah, the Alien had the cat, but there was an ongoing British one that had a cat in it.
Oh, you looked at Red Dwarf?
Red Dwarf. Yeah. So anyway, but no, and it's not because it was the team, but it was because something that you were starting to get out of the experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Love it. Who has our next question? Yeah.
Do I still dance? I love dancing. So we had a question buried in there that I'm going to pull out. You want to ask a question about dance? Go back.
Oh, yeah.
Go back. Go back. This is a question I put in, and he skipped it. Kaz skipped it. Okay.
How does dance connect to like?
No. Read the question.
I'm not sure I have it.
Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness. Here you go. No. I know this is kind of. Okay, it's the second question.
Excellent. Well, I've got a great question for you.
Okay.
How do we connect dance, space exploration, and practicing medicine in poorly resourced extreme environments?
Okay. So, thank you for asking, because that was. So I danced all the time. In fact, one of the big things was try to be a professional dancer. When I was leaving undergraduate at Stanford, I was a chemical engineer, African American studies. I'd gotten into medical school at Cornell, which is in New York City. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go there to be a professional dancer. And that was one of the times where it seems like I took the more traditional route, but I did because my mother said it was always, you can always dance if you're a doctor, but you can't necessarily doctor if you're a dancer, which was okay. But I did take classes at Alvin Ailey and stuff. But I think that the things are the amount of practice and deep skill that you have to be good at it, that you have to have a commitment, that you have to be open to continually learn and improve, and that you also have to be imaginative. So when you think about space, you do need that imagination to take you that step forward. But if you don't practice and you're not committed, things can go wrong really quickly. You have to work with a team. And if you think about dance, yes, you have to know what you're doing, but you have to know what these other people are doing, right? In medicine, in poorly resourced environments, you don't always have everything you need. So you have to figure out, how can I make this work with what I have? But that builds on a deep knowledge of what's going on physiologically with people, right? What's going on with this disease process? What goes on in a healthy process so you can prevent them from being ill? So I think it's really around things that probably connect to most disciplines, right? That skill, that commitment, the openness, continually learning, right? And imagination.
Yeah. There's something about placing a dot so outside of the sphere that you're operating in that can really inspire that way of thinking, I think.
Yeah, and I think it can make a difference. I'll keep my questions close just in case. But I think it can really make a difference in terms of just freeing yourself up for a moment, right? Sometimes we're so, we got to get this one thing done. And that happens to me. And sometimes like you have to just stop and let your unconscious do the work, right? Because you dumped in all the knowledge, everything is there. Now you just need to go out and dance, sing, plant something, just do something different so that your unconscious can put all the things together. Your internal AI can match everything up, right?
Love that. So we now have our questions on our iPads, so they're prioritized for me. So love these questions, by the way. The first one is from Candace Moore. So, Dr. Mae Jemison, you talked about being bold. How can organizations create a culture where employees feel safe to challenge the status quo and provide bold ideas?
So let's change the wording.
Yeah.
Let's take challenge off. And the reason why is so much of the wording that we have these days is combative, right? And that means that I'm challenging you to a duel, to a what? What happens if I lose the challenge? Right. And so let's say, where people are able to look into themselves and they're able to come up with ideas that may not be commonplace, and people will take the time to stop and look through them. Sometimes maybe it means having a a time frame where you just go off, and it's not so structured that it does not allow the space for coming up with things that are different. So one of the things I used to do, I worked the Earth We Share International Science Camp for kids 12 to 16 years of age. That's a rough age group. 12 to 16 years of age. And I wanted to work with them because that's when they started falling into science, and it was looking at science literacy. And we started challenging them with problems that were global problems, and that they had to come up with answers. Now, we actually have a methodology to work with it, but it pushes them to think through things differently. And we ask them questions like, in 1994, we were asking the question, predict the hot public stocks of the year 2030. The 12 to 16-year-olds, you know, but we have a method to do it, but it leaves the space open.
Love it. Now, our next...
We do it with grown-ups, too.
Now, our next question is a funny one. What's your favorite space food?
Now, on station, they have more than we had. It's like none of it was good. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's the reason they were making that big to do about that lettuce leaf. Right? Remember on stage, they kept on showing you, they may have heard it, and maybe you ignored it because you said that they couldn't possibly be talking about lettuce, or lettuce leaf. But the reason why is because the foods are mostly freeze-dried.
Yep.
You have to put water in it to plump them. So, I mean, there are things that are okay. A lot of people like to carry up chocolate and things like that. I was excited about getting back down here where we can eat fresh fruit. I think that from time to time with station now, they may get some fresh fruit, but it's really hard because things are, when you launch, stuff has usually been packed for like 2 weeks. There's not a lot of fresh fruit that stays packed well for 2 weeks, right? So, or even if you get an immediate thing, maybe it's 3 days before it gets around.
Yep.
But
you haven't sold me on the food. Our next question is from Kimberly Matthews. What do you believe are the biggest barriers to innovation today, and how can leaders help their teams overcome them?
So we're gonna have to do a definition on innovation. Innovation just means new. Again, just like extraordinary, it's not necessarily good. It's not necessarily better. It's just new. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish when we use the word innovation, right? Some incremental things are really great. So you can there might be incremental changes on in a bag of fluid, an IV bag, so that you don't get as much air going back in. It doesn't look big, it doesn't make a whole bunch of a to-do, but it's an innovation. How do we open up is by looking at purpose, and again, maybe having these sessions where you come up with just different ideas. Sometimes it's like, what do we need to do? Because I usually think that I keep using the word purpose because that usually is the place where the nidus of ideas are generated. Not I need this thing, but rather I need this capacity or this capability, and here's why I need it, and here's what might be valuable about it. And then always understand that something may come out of the innovation that was unexpected, right? And it may not even apply to you. I was working at Bell Labs once when I was a college student, and a chemist at Bell Labs had actually come up with what was how to detect iron in blood. Not iron, I'm sorry, lead in blood for children with very small amounts of blood, which was really revolutionary because before you needed a lot of blood. And so what is that coming out of Bell Laboratories, which is building phones and fiber optics?
Excellent. So our next question is, as technology advances, what have you learned motivates folks to get out of their busy day-to-day with old habits and start investing in time to upskill so they can work faster, better?
I'm the wrong person to ask that. Because some stuff I use, some stuff I don't. I mean, I think there's this okay, have you ever updated your computer, your iPad, your mobile device, and then you find out it's screwed up apps that you use all the time. And so I don't update sometimes until I have about 2 or 3 days that I can fool around with cleaning up all of my stuff, because otherwise I'm just going to be cursing for 2 or 3 days or a week, right? So I think that it's really about trying to understand, again, what you want to accomplish from it. Is it going to be that much better? And I have had discussions with team members where they wanted us to do something, and I was one of those early adopters years ago, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try this one. And then I still will adopt stuff early, but it really has to do something. If it's incremental, or if I know that it depends upon people using it, then how do I make sure that people have the time to be able to work with the platform in a non-emergent situation? Because you got to get used to it. You have to make and in fact, I like to just make mistakes on it and play on things until I know exactly what it's doing. And so how do you get people to do it is by having them understand what it's going to solve for them, but then you have to let them do it in a sort of a risk-free kind of environment, because otherwise they're not going to believe you. Now you can make them do it, which is another way.
And I've got a final question for us now. You've worked in very high-pressure, controlled environments with highly varied teams. How important is it to prioritize human connection and allow space for joy, wonder, and imagination?
It depends on what the assignment is and what's happening right then. I think if you always allow time for joy, excitement, human imagination, outside of the high-pressured environments. So the ones when I think of a high-pressured environment, I'm thinking of things like the engine's not working now, somebody's bleeding out. I maybe have different perceptions of what's high pressure. There's a really bad thunderstorm. The minimums have gone down to 0, right, for landing. I mean, I think of it a different. In that case, I don't care about joy. And that it's really this and the other thing. So I think if you have days to work on something, that is going outside, getting, I think, okay, so I didn't feel this was a high pressure environment because it was my job, but when I went in space, so everything is gray. And you won't know it from me dressed now, but I like color. So I took this watch up with me. I took a Swatch watch up with me that had all these colors in it. So every now and then I could look down and it could make me happy. So having little touchstones that make you happy in your space, and also giving yourself permission and your team permission to walk away for a second, right? In environments where the pressure is over days, you have an opportunity to walk away for a second. So it really depends on the circumstances. But what are the things that you like? What is it that makes you take a smile? You say, inspire, taking a deep breath, but going outside. And I have one other thing, look up. And I have a whole project on look up, but just go look up at the sky. Remember when you were a little kid, how it made you feel? Just find those small things that allow you to connect back to yourself and to the earth.
Oh, that's a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Jane.